Hey guys, Robert with East Coast Sawing Design, and I'd like to talk to you about my Ridgid table saw in my tiny shop. I purchased this, I'm the third owner of this table saw. I purchased it from a retired woodworker. He was getting out of woodworking due to his vision, and he gave me a really good deal on the saw, and the saw was well taken care of. For anybody that's new, the Ridgid ts3650, which is what this is Ridgid's last full cast iron table saw in the contractor's format. So a contractor's table saw is cast iron top. The wings might not be cast iron, but the top is. The motor hangs out the back, and it's on a skeleton type frame, so there's no there's no enclosure underneath the frame. Typically, the dust collection is handled directly off the bottom of the motor. So the saw has proven exceedingly useful for me in this tiny shop. Previously, my table saw was a piece of plywood with a handheld underneath it. The fence actually was homemade as well, but it worked surprisingly well. But it wasn't super accurate for fine cutting. It was really good for rough cutting. So when I got this, I had to make a lot of modifications in the shop to make it work. But I don't regret having this table saw at all. So the biggest change I had to make in the shop was my shop is only 7.5 feet wide. As you can see, it's not a very big shop at all. And the table saw, I want to say it's 64 inches wide. Let me just double check that. Yeah, so it's 64 inches wide. The actual cast top is 44 inches wide, and front to back, the top is 27 with an overall of 32. So my shop only being just over 7.5 feet wide, I didn't have the room to have this table saw come all the way out, primarily because my planer's on the wall right there. So what I did was I took two of the lower windows out. It just happened to work out that the table saw level was above the bottom of the window. And I built a 20-inch, I call it a bird box, because it kind of looks like a bird box on the side of your house, but it's just a way to have the rails of the table saw outside of the shop. It's shingled and tarred at the window level so that it won't put water into the shop. And that allowed me to push the table saw over this way 18 inches. It gives me a way to walk around it without having to move it. It's wired up for 120 volts, but can be ran at 240 for increased efficiency. I don't have 240 in the shop, so it does kind of drag down on my electrical a little bit. I only have a 20 amp service in here, but it works really good for me. So with the table saw, I did get quite a few accessories with it. Most importantly is my Freud dado stack. The previous owner had it in a case with this matting between it, so all the pieces are individually layered. I've used this quite a ton since I've got the table saw. The biggest project was for a 36-inch steamer style hope chest. But I don't use it every day, so it's a little bit of a pain to store as a result. So I just put it inside the bird box where it's completely out of the way. It came with a Freud 50-tooth combination blade. It also came with this Ridgid factory zero clearance insert. Quite like that insert. It did come with the factory Ridgid metal insert, so there's your stock insert. You can do all your bevel cuts with that, and I do occasionally like using it with a 1/4-inch dado stack. And this is the dado stack blade cover. Also came with 2 wrenches for to take your blade off. It came with, I don't know if you can see it in the video, a John Heist Ultimate box joint jig that Derek had built himself. Obviously, he did not need it anymore. I have not used it for box joint jigs, but it is a very useful thing. On the back wall, I have hanging my accumiter gauge that came with it. You can't buy this particular one anymore. It has an aftermarket 30, I want to say it's a 36-inch fence, because it can extend out past 18 inches. What else came with it? I have this little doodad here. This is a miter gauge holder for a micrometer. Not a micrometer. What's that thing called? It's digital. It's a for hold. It's allows me to put a micrometer type thing on it, so I can do fine adjustments of the fence. I get it within a few thousandths of an inch. I don't use it as I don't have the gauge that goes with it, but it is magnetic, so it will hold into the miter slot. And one day I'll probably get the gauge for it. It did come with a riving knife and a splitter, riving knife / splitter, guard and pawls, but I don't use it always with the stock blade, so it's kind of lost on me to use it and have to take it out and reset it all the time, so I don't use it at all. It came with a Delta tenoning jig. I don't use that at all, so I ended up selling it for, I think it was $75 I sold it for. It came with a Sears Craftsman style molding head. I had actually previously sold that molding head to the owner. So it came back to me. I ended up selling that as well, because I never used it when I had it previously. And what else did it come with? I think that's all it came with. There's a hold down that goes on the accumiter gauge. Yeah, I think that's all it came with. So it's been a really good table saw for me. I've been exceedingly pleased with it. It's 1.5 horsepower, which is very limiting if you are used to 1 3/4, 2 horsepower, 3 horsepower cabinet style saws. But I found the secret to using a table saw with 1.5 horsepower is to have very sharp blades and don't try to take more than you should. Like a 3 horsepower or 5 horsepower cabinet saw, you could take a 2-inch cut in hardwood and the saw would not bog down. This saw, you got to take a couple different cuts to get through that kind of thickness just to get a reasonable speed and pace. So it's definitely not a take a deep as cut as possible. Even using the dado stack, I don't recommend taking full depth cuts over half an inch. Yeah, that's all I gotta really say about it. The factory fence I really love on it. It's a lot of people do not like the factory fences on these things, but I'm quite happy with it. The height has been the only issue. There's a couple times I've wanted a really tall fence, but it's set up in such a way that it has all these T-slots in it, so I can add aftermarket T-slot fence extensions or just make my own. And yeah, my long-term review of this thing is it's been excellent. The Hercule base works really good. So just lock it. Herculift, that's what it's called. So I just lock it. The only time I really move the saw is for cleaning underneath it. Because I don't have active dust collection in my shop, the table saw does create quite a mess underneath it. So occasionally I lift it up on its wheels, spin it around, get it out of here and clean underneath it. I think in my current configuration, I can get, without moving it away from the wall, I can get, what is it, 18, I can get 20, not quite 21 inches of rip. Like I said, I don't do big projects, so I don't need a lot of rip capacity. And on this side, it'll do 12 inches, but I don't do a lot of work on this side of the fence. So yeah, would I recommend this saw? Absolutely. For what I paid for it, I couldn't have got the accessories that I had with it for what I paid for it. So I'm exceedingly happy. I've seen a couple of them for sale locally. Two of them were like $500-600, but the tops were like rotten on them. This one was actually really well taken care of. And I just clean it up every once in a while because my shop is a bit damp. And that's about it. I mean, it starts every time. You'll see the lights flicker. So one of the first things I made for the saw when I got it was a set of push sticks. Specifically, Matthias Wendell sells the PDF. Doesn't sell. He has the PDF available for these particular sticks. I have 2 sets now. I'm looking for a little piece of wood here. I just cleaned the shop, so all the scraps are kind of chucked out. So works for what I need. And these sticks work excellent, so I'll just show you real quick. So, in pine, cuts really cleanly. 2 sticks allows me to run small pieces like this through it without getting too close to my fingers. I'm not a huge fan of the one-piece style sticks. With your hand over top, partially because this saw sits a little bit tall. I think it's 34 or 36 inches off the floor. It actually sits really tall for this style saw. So I find my reach over, if I have to use your push style stick with your hand over top it, I find like by the time I'm getting all the way through, I'm really reaching over the saw, whereas I'm still very far back with the other style push sticks. So yeah, we're 36 on the dot above the tip floor. If it was 32, this would be a lot more comfortable to use. The other thing I made for it fairly early on was a small sled for it. This one's just made from I want to say 1/8 inch, but it might be 1/4 inch. Yeah, it's 1/4 inch MDF as the base, planed and jointed and planed 2x4s for the front and back rails, and a maple hardwood runner. It fits a little bit loose in the miter slot, like just a hair of movement. I didn't quite get the judgment right, but for quick cuts, it's a lot safer to use, even with that tiny bit of movement, than the Accumiter gauge for like your really small parts. Like this piece of wood here is 1 inch wide by like 2 inches long, kind of thing. Yeah, 2 inches, 3 inches long, and I can cut that quite safely using this jig, this sled. I'm not a big fan of the really big, fancy sleds, partially because I have a tiny shop, so space is at a premium. So I'm not going to want to put a table saw sled as big as my table saw on it. And I'm not really into using really big table saw sleds. I'm not doing that kind of precision work. So, yeah. Hope you enjoyed the review of my ts3650 and my thoughts on it. And if you liked the video, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. If you didn't like the video, tell me why you didn't like it. I'm always up for feedback. Thanks.